Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
But what Bill Nelson needs to do now is what he would be asking me to do if I had lost the election, is say, look, the election happened. Let's go forward. But he's not. He's just a pure sore loser trying to steal an election.
I'm sure it has to be really frustrating when you've worked so hard, tirelessly, then you were working on helping those folks that were displaced because of the hurricane. You did a great job with that from what we've heard from everyone down in Florida. I know it has to be frustrating when you look at the numbers, you win, you had your beautiful speech with your family there and your daughters next to you,
God.
and then this comes in, this news comes in. But there are a lot of people that say around the country, let's just count the votes just so that we can redo it and let's see what the problem is. Let's recount the votes. We want to make sure we do this right. Every voice needs to be heard. Are you questioning what's going on in these counties? Are you thinking there's something nefarious going on?
Well, we know, first off, we won by 57,000 votes that night. So we know that since then, just in these two counties, 93,000 new votes showed up. How'd that happen?
Oh, my God.
We know that Brenda Snipes said that ballots that she acknowledged, knows that they were illegal, she mixed them in with legal ballots. We know that happened. Okay, she said that she said they did that. Yeah. We know that they tried to continue to count ballots after the deadline. We know that. So I want all the votes. I want to make sure there's a free and fair election. Right. But there's laws. Comply with the laws. It's supposed to prevent fraud.
Oh, my God. So now we have Rick Scott deliberately trying to undermine people's faith in the election, even when everybody knows there is no fraud. So it's gotten to the point where in order to win an election, you have to destroy democracy. Hey, that's a good plan. Let's continue down that road. Let's see what happens. What could go wrong, everybody? They keep on lying about Brenda Snipes, the Broward County supervisor of elections, saying that she mixed in illegal votes with legal votes. Finally, somebody decided in the media, hey, why don't we book Brenda Snipes and why don't we ask her about these, 22 ballots, even though I've shown you that there are 150 illegal ballots in Florida being counted, but those are not in Broward, Palm Beach, or Miami-Dade County. Those illegal ballots are where the Fox News model is congratulating Rick Scott for helping all those people, and he has a beautiful family, therefore he should win. This is her, analytical process. But those 150 ballots that are illegal in Florida came by email in Bay County. Mark Anderson is the Bay County election supervisor. And in violation of Florida law, and I don't think anybody else in this country allows this, but I'm sure about Florida, you cannot vote by email. And he let these people vote by email. Now, last night, Brenda Snipes was on television, and she was asked by Chris Cuomo about these 22 ballots, these illegal ballots. And, she's so pissed, and I don't blame her. This is crazy. There is no fraud. Everyone knows there's no fraud. The judges that have been, included in all these, but I got really freaky news for you after I show you that there are no illegal ballots in Broward County. In Bay County, there are 150 illegals cast by people by email, which is illegal, at least in this state. But they asked her last night, what is with these 22 ballots? What is with these? And she will tell you they have never been counted. They were not counted, and they're not counted to date, although she believes that these provisional ballots, once there's a chance to have people verify their signature, which the court has ordered people get a chance to do, they will be proven to be legitimate voters in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale. That is her answer.
The central criticism comes to whether or not all the ballots that are supposed to be counted are, and whether or not ballots that should not be counted are being counted. Your critics point to 22 rejected provisional ballots that were put in with a batch of 200 valid ones. And they say, you see, this is what happened back in 2016. They make mistakes in there, and it can change an election.
As I said before, an election is a huge operation. There are many moving parts, but we pay attention to each one of them. There are folks who have specialties in all kinds of functions of the election process. And there were 25 ballots in question, not 21. And those 25 ballots had not been counted as of today. But now those ballots, as I understand it, came from valid Broward voters. And I believe every voter should be given a fair opportunity to have their ballot cast. But we don't want that ballot to be cast illegally. If the ballot doesn't meet the standard, that's one thing. But if, if the ballots have been determined to come from actual registered voters who met all the criteria of being a registered voter and operated as a registered voter, those votes should be counted. But that's not just my decision. Decisions like that are taken before the canvassing board, and we sit as a team. There are 3 of us, 2 county judges and myself, supervisor of elections. So if a ballot is in question, before that ballot is open, it comes to the canvassing board so that the canvassing board can review the circumstances. And the canvassing board makes a determination as to whether those ballots should be counted.
Is it not the case that whether the number is 22 or 25, whatever the number is, that those rejected provisional ballots that were put with 200 valid ones, is it not the case that those 22 or 25 ballots were then removed again because they were not supposed to be counted with the other ones?
They were never counted. Those ballots had been separated. They've been isolated. They have not been counted to date.
Thank you. They just lie. It's just so incredible. And I got news for you. In Palm Beach County, where I voted, they can't count my ballot either. They can't count ballots because yesterday we found out from the supervisor of elections in Palm Beach County, Susan Booker, that the machines overheated. And they have to call for mechanics, not IT people. Oh, no, not IT people. No, this is Palm Beach County. They need to call in mechanics to fix the machines because they overheated. What are they, coal-fired voting machines? Are they steam-powered here in Palm Beach County? And the difference between these two, between Bill Nelson, the Democrat, and Rick Scott, the governor, who wants to be the senator, is 0.2%, which means they're going to have to do a hand recount after the machine recount. And they can only count one race at a time in these old, vile, antiquated machines because this is how Rick Scott wanted it as governor of this state for 8 years. Everybody told him about our machines. Everybody told him. In Florida, we lost a whole day of counting because the voting machines freaking overheated. The Miami Herald reported this morning that the elections department has flown in mechanics. Mechanics. What are we going to have a foundry forge some parts for our voting machines now? Oh, my God. And Rick Scott is declaring victory. He literally went to the Senate. He went up to Capitol Hill and he stood there with Mitch McConnell today. This is really sick. And they included him in Mitch McConnell's Senate Dream Team.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I've been through a few of these over the years. It's a lot better to have a big freshman class than not. And so we're here this morning to welcome our 6 new Republican senators that allowed us to continue our majority. And we'll be heading across the way here shortly to elect the leadership team for the next 2 years.
Governor Scott, do you still contend that there's fraud going on in Florida with this recount?
All right, everyone, thank you very much. That's it.
Folks.
Thanks, folks. This is it. Thank you. All right, thank you guys.
TD, go.
TD, folks, this is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's the really freaky part. Here's something you don't know, you've probably not heard, but it's true and it's scary and it's horrible. Most people are thinking that the courts will weigh in on this, and they have along the way. For instance, they've extended the count time for Broward and Palm Beach till Friday because the machines overheated in Palm Beach, right? Even though they're celebrating. That was Rick Scott standing there, next to Mitch McConnell as an elected senator, and he's not been certified as the winner because they can't finish the count because the machines are overheating over here, over there. You got 150 ballots that was sent illegally by email over there. You got provisional ballots that still need to be counted, overseas ballots that still need to be counted, and military ballots that still need to be counted, and mail-in ballots that still need to be counted by hand. And then there's going to be a hand recount, okay? Check that out. Now, all that has to happen by November 20th. Today is what, the 14th? Is today the 14th? Yes. Okay, in 6 days, trust me, in Florida, check the shape of the state, everybody. And look how limp that is. You see how it just dangles there? It's a dangler. That is not going to happen. So the courts will not be the arbiter of who wins because all the court can do is say, keep counting, we'll extend, they'll issue injunctions, they'll enjoin people from calling the election, they'll do all these things. But if the count isn't completed by the 20th, this makes me sick to say, but it looks like the Senate will pick its own member. No, I'm not kidding. The Senate would get the last word on a disputed Senate race. What? Here's how it could happen. Even if Senator Bill Nelson wins the election, he may not win the election. And that is because the Constitution says that the ultimate arbiter of who gets a Senate seat is the Senate itself, not the election officials, not the courts. And you know, Mitch McConnell is such a dirty bird. He is such a dirty dog. He has had absolutely no problem throwing away the filibuster rule for Supreme Court justices, a simple majority for the Supreme Court. This used to be the most deliberative body in the history of deliberative bodies, the Senate, the U.S. Senate. And now, oh no, Mitch McConnell suspends all these rules, okay? But here's what it says in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 5. It's very clear. It's like as clear as a cloudless day in Florida, okay? It says, quote, each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. Now, yeah, that would seem extremely, excruciatingly undemocratic. And it has come up before. But it's only come up when you had decent people occupying those Senate seats, which we don't have anymore. Okay, in New Hampshire, in 1974, there was a race, and it was literally 355 votes separating the Democrat and the Republican candidate. The Democrat was John Durkin, and the Republican opponent was Louis Wyman. Doesn't matter if you remember this or not. It just matters that you know this happened before. 355 votes. So they did a recount, right? And it reversed the outcome. And the outcome found that Mr. Wyman, the Republican, won by 2 votes. The Democrat was the winner. They did a recount, and the Republican won by 2 votes in New Hampshire. So the Democrat asked the Senate to step in and resolve the race. The Democrats in 1974, go look it up, you freaks, had a solid Democratic majority. The Senate still was deadlocked about what to do because they didn't want to upend the voice of the people. They didn't want to upend democracy. And they were still unable to seat Mr. Durkin. So the Senate decided, let's declare the seat vacant so New Hampshire can have a special election. And that is what happened. And New Hampshire got a special election and re-voted, and the Democrat, Mr. Durkin, won the race outright. So turning to the Senate to be the final arbiter has happened before. It also happened in 2008. You might remember Al Franken and Norm Coleman, that Senate race in Minnesota. It was about 300 votes separating the two of them. But Mr. Coleman, as much as I disagree with his policy positions, had some sense of decency at long last and conceded rather than having the Senate put in this undemocratic position of choosing for Minnesota. So Coleman conceded, and Al Franken was finally seated. But it was like many months of back and forth and back and forth. Well, ask yourself this one. Do you think in this day and age, do you think now that you know how disgustingly partisan and how disgustingly ruthless the Senate has become, that Mitch McConnell would refuse to seat the Republican, or would refuse, what if they refuse to seat Bill Nelson? Do you know what I'm saying? And it could actually come down to the Senate making the call and just swearing in Bill Nelson. And from what I saw this morning, that's what freaked me out. I was like, oh, well, I guess that's it. Because does it sound to you like with 0.2% of difference and a hand recount likely? Well, it's required by law now. First, they have to finish the machine recount. So far, it's 0.2%. That requires by law a hand recount. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.